Welcome to Storyflix Film, where movies are not just watched at a broken bar, they are experienced. Here, we bring you fast, powerful, and engaging movie recaps, turning full films into short, exciting stories without missing the thrill. From action-packed blockbusters to emotional dramas and mind-blowing sci-fi, we break it all down in a way that keeps you hooked till the end. So sit back, relax, and get ready, because every story here is a cinematic journey in minutes. Blade is a 1998 Americana superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character. The first installment in the Blade franchise, it was directed by Stephen Norrington and written by David S. Goyer. Wesley Snipes as stars as Blade, a human with vampire strengths but not their weaknesses, who battles other vampires. The supporting cast include Stephen Dorff, Kris Kristofferson and Bush Wright. Blade was released in the United States on August 21, 1998, and was a commercial success, grossing $131 million on a budget of $45 million. It is also hailed as one of Snipes' signature roles. Blade was noted as a dark superhero film for its time, as well as being Marvel's first successful film. It was followed by two sequels, A Blade IA, 2002, and A Blade, Trinity, 2004. Snipes reprised his role as Blade in the 2024 film A Deadpool Wolverine. Plot: in 1967, a pregnant woman is attacked by a vampire, causing her to go into a premature labor. Doctors are able to save her baby, but the woman dies. 30 years later, the child has become the vampire hunter Blade, who is known as the Daywalker, a human-vampire hybrid that possesses the supernatural abilities of the vampires without any of their weaknesses, except for the requirement to consume human blood. Blade raids a rave club owned by the vampire Deacon Frost. A badly injured vampire is taken by police to the hospital, where he feeds upon a hematologist, Karen Jensen, and escapes. Blade takes Karen to a safe house where she is treated by his old friend Abraham Whistler. Whistler explains that he and Blade have been waging a secret war against vampires using weapons based on their elemental weaknesses, such as sunlight, silver, and garlic. As Karen is now marked by the bite of a vampire, both he and Blade tell her to leave the city. At a meeting of pure blood vampire elders, Frost, the leader of a faction of younger vampires, is rebuked for trying to incite war between vampires and humans. As Frost and his kind are not natural-born vampires, they are considered socially inferior. Meanwhile, returning to her apartment, Karen is attacked by police officer Krieger, who is a familiar, a human thrall loyal to vampires. Blade subdues Krieger, but thanks to Karen, Krieger escapes. Blade tracks him down and beats him into revealing Frost's interest in an archive of ancient vampire knowledge. Krieger informs Frost of what happened and is killed for his failure. Frost also has Elder Dragonetti stripped of his fangs and torched alive by the sunrise, then strips the other elders of their authority and imprisons them. Meanwhile, Blade visits the archivist Pearl, a morbidly obese vampire, and, with a UV light, tortures him into revealing that Frost wants to command a ritual where he would use 12 pure blood vampires to awaken the blood god Lomgra, and Blade's blood is the key. Later, at the hideout, Blade injects himself with a special serum that suppresses his urge to drink blood. However, the serum is beginning to lose its effectiveness due to overuse. While experimenting with the anticoagulant ETA as a possible replacement, Karen discovers that it explodes when combined with vampire blood. She manages to synthesize a vaccine that can cure the infected, but learns that it will not work on Blade. Karen is confident she can eventually cure his bloodlust, but it would take years he doesn't have. After Blade rejects Frost's offer for a truce, Frost and his men attack the hideout, where they bite Whistler and abduct Karen. When Blade returns, he helps Whistler commit suicide. When Blade attempts to rescue Karen from Frost's penthouse, he is shocked to find his still alive mother, Vanessa Brooks, who reveals that she came back the night she was attacked and was brought in by Frost, who appears and reveals himself as the vampire who bit her. Blade, whose real name is revealed to be Eric Brooks, is then subdued and taken to the Temple of Eternal Night, where Frost plans to perform the summoning ritual for Lomgra. Karen is thrown into a pit to be devoured by her colleague Webb, who has transformed into a decomposing zombie-like creature. Karen injures him and escapes. Blade is drained of his blood, but Karen allows him to drink hers, enabling him to recover. Frost completes the ritual and obtains the powers of Lomgra. Blade confronts Frost after killing all of his minions, including his mother, but initially finds him too powerful to defeat. Reasoning that Frost's physical body is still vulnerable, Blade gives him an overdose of Ebta. This triggers an adverse reaction that causes Frost to turn into a grotesque blob before exploding. Karen offers to help Blade cure himself instead. He asks her to create an improved version of the serum so he can continue his crusade against vampires. In a brief epilogue, Blade confronts an old vampire enemy in Moscow. Cast Wesley Snipes as Austin Eric Brooks. Blade, a half-vampire daywalker, Adamper, who hunts vampires. Blade is highly skilled in martial arts and always equips himself with vampire-killing weapons. Since Stephen Dorff also Deacon Frost, an upstart vampire with great ambitions and influence. He emerges as Blade's primary enemy and also wants to conquer the human race. Since Kris Kristofferson also Abraham Whistler, Blade's mentor, father figure and weaponsmith. Since Bush Rita as Dr. Karen Jensen, a hematologist who is bitten by a vampire. She stays with Blade to remain safe while she finds a cure for herself and eventually becomes his partner in fighting Deacon Frost's party. Since Donna Logia as Quinn, a longtime enforcer of Frost, capable of surviving wounds that kill lesser vampires. Since Pseudo Kira as Gaetano Dragonetti, a vampire elder. Since Arlie Javara as Mercury, a fleet-footed vampire and one of Frost's multiple lovers. Since Tracy Lordsa as Rackle, a seductive vampire who leads a man to the blood rave. Since Kevin Patrick Walls as Officer Krieger, a familiar, or human servant, of Frost's. Since Tim Genia as Dr. Curtis Webb, Karen's ex-boyfriend, who is killed by Quinn and later becomes a zombie-like creature, instead of fully a vampire, as a result of a failed transformation process. Since Sanala Athana as Vanessa Brooks, Blade's mother, who has become a vampire. Since Eric Edwards as Pearl, a morbidly obese vampire. Production background: the character Bladia was created in 1973 for Marvel Comics by the writer Marv Wolfmana and artist Gene Colonna as a supporting character in the 1970s comic At the Tomb of Dracula. The comic Blade used antiquity knives and was much more the everyman in his behavior and attitude. Though courageous, he displayed flaws as well, such as an inability to get along with certain other supporting cast members and a hatred of vampires that bordered on fanaticism. The character was not originally a daywalker but a human being immune to being turned into a vampire. Lacking the superhuman speed and strength of his undead quarry, he relied solely on his wits and skill until he was bitten by the character Morbiusa as Sinina Peter Parker. Spider-Man number 8. First published in August 1999, the film portrayal of Blade was updated for a 1990s audience, and the comic's character was subsequently modified to match. Goyer replaced the daggers Blade used in the comics with a sword and gave him a warrior samurai-like aesthetic. The film's version of Deacon Frost also differs greatly from his comic counterpart. He was older with white hair and a literal church deacon, but the film retains Frost's upstart ambitions. Development to a New World Pictures bought the rights to Marvel Comics. They were set to make a Mexico set western starring a Richard Roundtree as the vampire hunter. A Marvel Studios then started to develop the film in early 1992, when rapper LL Cool J was interested in playing the lead role. The film was eventually set up at a New Line Cinema, with a David S. Goyer writing the script. When Goyer heard a film was in development, he went into a pitch with director Ernest Dickerson. David Fincher was also attached to the project and even worked on the script with Goyer. New Line Cinema originally wanted to do Bladia as something that was almost a spoof before the writer convinced them otherwise. At one point, the studio even asked if Blade could be white. Goyer wanted to take the character seriously, and ground them in a sense of reality with vampirism as a biological disease. He even pitched a trilogy of movies almost a Wagneriana in scope. He also wanted to demystify the vampires and treat them as serious villains with a greater sense of realism instead of the doomed romantic characters shown in Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. Goyer's early drafts predated but took a similar postmodern approach as the films From Dusk Till Dawn and A Vampire in Brooklyn. After failing to get a Black Panther film into production, A in 1996, A Wesley Snipes has assigned on to star also Blade. A Snipes also produced through his company A Raw Films, and worked with the writers to invest the story with elements of classic tragedy, like Hamlet to heighten the character's emotional drama. Blade had a $45 million budget. Casting: when Goyer first pitched the idea of doing a Blade film, A. Michael DeLuca, head of New Line Cinema, suggested Denzel Washington, Wesley Snipes, and Lawrence Fishburne, but to Goyer, Snipes was always the perfect choice for Blade. The finalized script was sent to Snipes and no other actor was seriously considered. Patrick Mguona was the first choice to play Whistler, as Stephen Norrington was a fan of The Prisoner, 1967. A. John Voight was also considered for the role. Filming. Principal photography commenced on February 5, 1997, and concluded on June 6, 1997, and was in large part done in Los Angeles, with some scenes being shot in Death Valley. All sets were constructed, and all on-set filming occurred, in what was formerly the Redken Shampoo Factory in Canoga Park. The effects for the film were done by Flat Earth Productions. Post-production: the first cut of the film was 140 minutes long. It had a disastrous test screening with audiences. Heavy edits and reshoots were implemented, which delayed the release date for more than half a year. The most significant change was the addition of the final sword fight between Blade and Deacon Frost, which did not exist in the original cut. In the original ending, Frost turned into Lumgra and became a large swirling mass of blood instead of keeping his form. This was scrapped because the filmmakers could not get the special effects to look right. It can be seen as a special feature on the DVD. A. Stan Lee originally had a cameo that was ultimately cut from the film. He played one of the cops who came into the Blood Club during the aftermath and discovered Quinn's body on fire. The scene where Karen and Deacon are talking about the cure for vampirism initially ran slightly longer, and answered the question of how the vampires would feed if everybody were turned into vampires. They would keep some humans alive in giant blood bags to harvest them. The bags can still be seen in a doorway during the scene, and later played an integral part of the plot in Blade Trinity. Marvel was not going to give Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan credit for the characters they had created, but Goyer insisted. He asked New Line and they accepted, but representatives of Marv Wolfman said only he should get credit, and not Gene Colan. Goyer insisted that both be credited. Music: main article: a soundtrack containing hip-hop music was released on August 25, 1998, by ATVT Records and Epic Records. It peaked at number 36 on the Billboard at 200 and number 28 on the Top R&B hip-hop albums. The British techno band The Prodigy was approached to do the soundtrack and score to the film, but had to turn down the offer due to other commitments. Released theatrical: Blade premiered on August 19, 1998, at New York's Sony Theaters Lincoln Square, with another screening at Los Angeles' Grauman's Chinese Theatre the following day before opening wide on August 21. The film was banned from showing in Malaysia, widely considered to have the most controlling censors in Southeast Asia. Home media: Blade was first released in ADVTA and IFSA on December 1, 1998, by a New Line Home Entertainment. The film was released in a Blu-ray on June 19, 2012. The film was released in 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray by Warner Bros. Home Entertainment on December 1, 2020. The remastered 4K release differs from earlier versions by using a widescreen at 2.39:1 format. And 30th anniversary in fall 2028. Lawsuits. Marv Wolfman unsuccessfully sued Marvel and New Line Cinema for $35 million after the release of the film, claiming he was not bound by a work-for-hire contract when he created the character in 1972. He, along with artist Gene Colan, received a based on characters created by credit in this film. Three extras in the blood rave scene sued the studios and effects company Real Creations Incorporated, claiming the stage blood caused permanent blemishes to their skin. Reception. Box office. In North America, A Blade dislodged Saving Private Ryan, which led the previous 4 weeks in the box office, to finish at number 1 with $17.1 million across 2,322 screens. The film would top the box office for 2 weekends until it was overtaken by There's Something About Mary. The film also opened in number 1 in both Spain, with $1.58 million, US, in 200 theaters, and Australia, with $1 million from 132 cinemas in the Flemish region of Belgium. The film earned $323,000 from 20 cinemas, and the Netherlands earned the film $246,000 from 44 cinemas. France made $1.98 million in 5 days from 241 cinemas, but the film was less successful in Hong Kong, with $182,000 from 22 cinemas, and South Africa, $159,000 from 64 cinemas. The United Kingdom was more successful, taking in $5.78 million over 10 days, as was Brazil, making $855,000 in 4 days from 133 cinemas. Blade remained atop the North American box office in its second weekend, earning $11.1 million. Blade finished its box office run with $70 million domestically and $61 million worldwide for a total of $131.28 million. Despite the success of the film, Marvel shared only a flat fee of $25,000. He was creating and really designing he would around a story inspiring the visualization of the project. BL cinematographer Chovinda told has a difficult director but had a very good suggestion. The questions was whether the would interested in a black superhero. Theory would be a problem never had for coming at a tail end of December 1998. Blade won to number 1 knocking Saving a Private Ryan from the top spot. The movie ruled off box office for 10 weekends, becoming Super Rise's Hitina, staying in a theater throughout December and into early October. It was nice because it has a leading vat to that point, opening the door from a successful sequel and some incredibly support from Blood Vanity Pattern Aswada, who claimed that Hesson hated working with Agour, who directed the third installment, so much that he insisted on only communicating via post-it note, which he signed as Blair. More importantly, Blair's show a wave of martial artifacts at general movies, including numbers which made gang fu movies from thrilling cutting, and soon there was a fresh wave of exciting rated action films, and of course the film legitimized our commercial firepower of black superhero. Gu has mentioned that it has initially some pushback from the studio, which wondered if Blood could be white, but before Blood black superhero movies had either been comedies or bombs. Blood have changed that impression, especially in our modern age of polish. A super popular superhero movie feels like a charm capsule from a gam comic book movie. Corazon and Scarfy, its opening the gave scene with everyone ultimately drenched in blood still fears a transition. No way something like that is happening in Black Widow. Everyone in this movie take the martial seriously, but the film is a lot less self-important than your typical DC or Maria, and Essen is just fantastic, equally comfortable with the BL action sequences and dramatic moment, unlike Niasi and overacted actor Hope into the blockbuster snack cartoon after his sim while going for bigger play that unfortunately Cyberwit soon hurt into trouble with a federal government sentence in 2008 to 3 years in prison for tax evasion. Asa Fernington, he went from player to draga the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. As far as Blair's impact on the black cinema, the progress was slow and no doubt hampered by the car for commercial filler, but Black, which had dreamed about it going years earlier and did all about all body black soap, could be bogus, and no doubt Black her success in turn have new interest in the Bella that 2-time Oscar winner will be playing character in a Marvel studio reboot. Marvel had given Frank and Alienda pitched the idea to him, which immediately said yes to public snap hasa the casting, but back in 2018 he propounded that kind of actor could possibly take over as Blade. Scale wise, there is not a lot of guys out here and a dance at the martial art that act well and can. Of the blood flavor he's still bladdered eating, they go be in shape and have some sex appeal. Blade has some sex appeal. He sounded skeptical there wasn't anybody after them who could do it. Maybe you know somebody. I don't know. Snipes will always be a blood, but still I think satisfied of Snakia after being watching the fantastic dreaded dual series Bone in Netflix's when first a release Blade was a surprise hit. It was Marvel's most successful film at a time. Marvel first film critical release How the Dark was absent and a complete failure both critically and financially. Blade was somewhat of an experimental movie taking a lesser known character from the comics and giving it hard A rating. Dia was significant as not only was it financially a successful but it has launched the Marvel brand into the filming industry. Bra success have braved way of X-Men doesn't and Spider-Man doesn't too. The movie restored faith in the comic book genre which had taken its a fair share of debating from the filler films such as Batman and Robin. The story opened up with a Arda tour character out on the job which just so happened to be a hunting a vampire. The opening scene is one of the best character introducers I have witnessed. It grabs Yuri and OS not light up during his hunt. Bladia comes upon a victim, shows pity on Hera and adds her from her. The story kind of just unfold. It introduces also the villain Dean Fro represent a new younger braver game of a vampire who challenges that elder vampire. This surprising Ina the vampire rank ultimately lead out in approaching it with our protagonist native. What impressed me most about the Bladia after rewatching it is know how little it hold your hand. So there are in theory scene of the exposition but it feels some more like world building and bringing in a more modern approach to the vampire lore. Blade is not an original story which I love. It feels like every first film in the comic book genre have so slowing hero became sad hero which is becoming a trope of the gender. The film never needs to be beautiful be ever the Hediadra with the blood's motivation Isa establishing early he's the hunter or the hunter and his mission to slay the all which stays consistent throughout the movie. Our hero here is both Focusita and he casts through his force with extremia efficiency with no hesitation. It tells us how he been doing this his whole life. This film is presented in a fast, energetic, stylish manner. Extremia camera angles shift through being right in on top of action. Sad pieces from both a human world and a vampire world are such with blinding lights and flooding shadow. It makes for a visual with subtle experiences. A visual QE I noticed was the younger vampire congregated in fleshy colorful and a modern location while the elder vampire decided that dark and dearly ancient looking environment. The new wave of the undead lived in a world that was very much alive. The soundtrack to the film has a mix and match of hip-hop, Checoa and Rockfish stand up to Destina music player during action scene giving them a kinetic feel while slow hip-hop beats the player rowing the more summary part of the film. The music enhanced this film with some truly memorable tonia as they have no own playlist today. Another stand aspect of the Blood Isa that they won me and renating the riser have master so to present them in a more friendly manner. That is why we don't to see while Ryan deciding his opponent into a bloody spaces. Blood is bloody and gory because it need to be. Vampire witnesses a grand disposing government in dirt to work and blood certainly has a flair for showing us blood and limbs made a wallet and a blade. God bless and is this thing a great and its delight of his gadget area great as if side a vampire but also looks in any excuse to have a some in a film Isa fine by me. Wesley Snipes is a fantastica as a leading man. The film his delivery is calculated and hand-hardened. Play does not see himself as a hero more a man on a mission. Denzel Washington and Forrest Whitaker were considered for the role of play but Wesley was a man for the job. His martial art background allowing for brutal fights insnating a film Buddha also the lead fight coordinator. Every fight scene in the film he did himself and is evident because there is no lineage for flashy camera disguise a stunt double. What we are seeing is a Wesley Snyder doing how blow for blow and surgery to be. It's not only Snarda that make blood truly shine. Krisa Willer is superb as our mature sidekick. His god some of the best line hands in lovable, miserable old bastard. Unfortunately, the final of the film is pretty poor. We never fall in the sand. Catalytic event are about to occur and the final battle becomes a standard sword fight dead and shockingly quickly. The final also relies heavily on CJ which has not dated well and I doubt it even looked good back then. Sense of Deacon first make us for a pretty laughable villain. He is neither physically imposing nor cuninga enough to become a gross as an arch-nemesis to Blade. While I enjoy the idea of the young rebelling against Holt the new wave of some vampires are just easy. They present the edge of how the 90s is winning the fashion and dialogue is laughable dated. I am pretty sure Onya Villain says article the lack of Onya real horror element is sorely missed, especially with a dark visual and a vampire history available. It feels like a missed opportunity. The sequel directed by the Dello was far more effective at creating horror. I would definitely recommend anyone who is a fan of the comic book genre and action film to give Blood to watch. It's go to blend substance inspired and is probably the biggest contributor to your favorite superhero film in the last 20 years. On August 21, 1998, New Line revealed Wesley Snipes, a marvelous adaptation put in his generality. The vampire movies gets a reworking New Line's excessively gory and unpleasant bling. Wesley Snipes as a half-elite immortal with big gun and musical who is determined to be radio enterprisingly bloodsucker based in a character from Marvel comic book Blade. He must slash his way to a respectably opening weekend at a box office, but there's nothing noteworthy about his Sikilfista crossover beers and likely forms idea of the dragman Norse will stay away and a vamp for color will be very and Aya should be credited to disagree Davida Square. The scenario is a new angle and not the appointed ones from Serum to be sunblock, but at this center is a big fight. The film began with this literal blood as a web glow in anator. Here are a sprinkle will be deployed in preparation from communal massacre bursting into Ryan. The four furious gangs fun displayed and avenging Alia for this normal flock. His mother died after a bite in the neck as they gave a birth to him. It is a 1998 Americana superhero horror film directed by Stefana Norrington and written by David Esco. A half-mortal, half-immortal is out to be against his mother, dad in the world of vampire, the modern-day technologically advanced empire. He is going after searching for his particular black needed to be human and evil god Woe plays a crucial role in their plan to execute the human race. Being a Marvela fan and loving the horror genre, Thesa was a perfect mix for me. During the late 90s and early 2000s, comic book movies were not taken seriously. We got to see Superman, Batman, a Supergirl, Marvel's Captain America, Fantastic Four itself. This film presented a darker hero to add it. The movie starts with a bang establishing Blade, a human-vampire hybrid that passes the supernatural abilities of the vampire without any father weakness. Bloodheads rap a club owned by the antagonist, a vampire named Deacon Pra. One of the vampire to the hospital where he fears on her home is Karen Johnson and escape Karen to the safe house where she is treated by his old friend Abraham Whistler. Whistler explained that he and Blood have been waking a secret where a vampire using weapon based on other elemental weaknesses at a console of pure blood vampire elder meeting. From affection of young true vampires rebuked for trying to decide between vampire and human as Fro and his kind are not natural born vampire. They are considered socially interfer. Thesa is so terribly poor devices in the movie from the villain which entered me. I don't think they needed more of this than they ultimately had. I wanted to see more of the social vampire society. Police officer Greiger attacks Armada her apartment. Familiar human lure vampire blood subjecture and uses him to locate and a vampire Babel comes upon Pearly and Fordley obsess vampire and Dirt Hema and Judy revealing that they can want to be Commander R where he would choose 12 a pure blood vampire to awaken the air and head out blood inject himself with a super special serum that surprises Hema to his drunk blood. However, the serum is beginning to lose his effectiveness due to unsuitable blood devices and the creditor or writer. What is a life to see the hero challenged with his mortality and availability? Karen is confident that she can cure blood test, but it would take hard years of grinding at frozen heat to the hideout. In fact, Wrestler and Abel return to help Wrestler commences. It gave that he loved Wrestler. He'd get the dad and then motivate him in a Blaze attempt to rescue Karen from first to penthouse. Is so shocked to find Heza still alive and murder revealed that she come back the Marshy was attacked and was brought in dust by Frost where and reveal himself as a vampire who by Hero Blade is then subjugated and taken to the temple of the Interna where Frost planned to perform the summoning ritual for complete the pattern and obtain the power of Lovihemgra. And this is how to be Fat Amanda movies based on Marvel's anime comic franchise. Simply Cloud could none make it out of the development hell prior to a Blade. What all did we have that graphic a Captain America movie from the 80s where he had rubber era those incredible book TV movies starring a Bill Robberman produced the Fantastic Four flake that was never meant to be seen by Athea aside from the Jeep, Embarrassing a garbage we will all like to forget. Marvel characters just did not exist in a film in 1998. And then Black Snack is under the radar because he who the, A_A, is it? After a surprising vampire attack, Karen finds herself thrust into the bees under Blade the vampire hunter and has a major whistler. A Blade is a jaywalker, a half-imperi who possess all of the undead surrender at their weakness. He uses those power to be sad bloodsucker. He may be running short on time as his vampiri half is slowly eclipsing. He is a human side at the top of Blade is near the Gone Forest. A powerful vampiri nightclub owner politician. If you have never Marvel of the Dracula comic, then I would highly recommend you seeing some of the essential era action. If they are still in print, the AIA are some of the publisher best output of the sevens that does not involve barbarian. Subluxing sea gold and chopping the head of King Blood as he was originally conceived was a dude with an afro and a green goal who dark and paid by his own role. He was awesome, don't get me wrong. But we will have director Stefan a 1998 face of him to be thanked for updating Blade for modern Orsis. So screenwriter David's punching up Blair's Regina alongside Wesley Snipes of the character have since become the singular interpretation of the vampire hunter having migrated to and surpasses the source material. Blood was never a diewalker in the comic before this movie, but he sure as hell is now. Now that I'd matter. I suppose 3 feature film and a TV series later and a joke still can't hold on more than 1 miniseries every 5 a year. On the topic of the Blood movie, however, I think the fact that very few people outside of the comic shop know how this guy was led to its success. There was no cast or image of the character in the public eye and no precise acceptation. The filmmaker facia a little lesser into an absolute narration is very Lee in that time maybe too much. So this seems to have an love and rap fetish and the entire film can probably be mapped out as a string of parties. I did not mind much of his music video approach to things. I actually liked how it falls fast forward or jazz looked and the techno music complemented the fight sequences quite well, enhancing several visual cue other moments such as the sequences where some Japanese schoolgirls sing a Healy Uma rap song that goes on for minutes so angry. When Deadpool came out in 2016, fans held it as a novelty due to its rating. But Deadpool was not the first comic book movie to be rated out. That honor goes in 1998 in movie Battle Blade. At the time was a slightly lesser known Marvel character who premiered in the 1972 in Show of Dracula. A vampire hunter. Blair's mission is to destroy all vampire, especially the one who killed his brother while she was pregnant with him, causing Blade himself to be born a half a vampire. Even before the movie's release, Blood had quite a following. He had a fascinating storyline, half vampire hunter who has all of vampire resuscita yet none weakness except 45 vampa that's for humans, so we get to see a very dark superhero want to be save humanity and struggle to keep his inner trust in check. 1998 Wesley Snipes in a Blood live action film which was really the first news toward media superhero film. Comic book movies did know to have a great reputation back there and it was high time to say for superhero a story could be adopted to film in a way that was engaging and exciting with a heavy dust of darkness. The film opens with a pregnant woman attacked by a vampire being rushed toward a hospital with baby Blair's despair is ready to come tearing through it. That bird can blurfully goes away of family movie and TV mom before her by doing any childbirth jumping 30 years ahead being toiled in comfortable scene. But this club is a special why because it's a vampire lovia that stadrona with blood from a sprinkler system. These it causes any human in a glove to be naturally freak out. Why the vampires are super into it. Of course, the man is shrieking a story to the vampire to represent a working reladia is here now and is going to be a supernatural blood part and it is awesome. There's a blood spraying anywhere. Vampires are getting disintegrated left and right. Notice how the vampires just crumble on sliver bulge pump. No except the vampire is not completely dead. It's brings back to life via attacking a hematologist named Karina Johnson. Luckily Blade shows up the hospital to finish the job and bring Karen to his safe house and he is Major Whistler. Whistler is confused by Blade bringing a straight human, says he was beaten. Whistler tells Blade I should have you killed her. Blade as totally remark that no, he did not in fact kill her. Whistler's expression clearly says damn it, Blair would be better not get killed because of your owner. Karen is not show a sign of the vampirism, so she sticks up blood to find a Kara because that, but suddenly her a walking on magnet. We find it out at a bunch of a local vampire and planning something big. USC in this world vampires have a definite hair where natural burn or pure blood vampires are considered socially superior to be turned vampire. The born vampires did not seem have any stronger opportunity or power versus the turner vampire. They are just better because they send so, but one turn vampire named Taken Fro decided he is added with these snowy pure blood and he is going to be execute the elder and use whatever pure blood I love to resurrect and all a powerful blood good and infuse himself with the power Dion's missing a key in a show resurrect his blood good damp blood and guess who is near honestly I am surprised his area grieve was nota outburdened a lot sooner. It does notice seem as the pure blood and on a particular fall safe in place to prevent an oppressing. They were already in a shaky ground. I admit is not the most compelling a villain, he's just too goofy to be taken seriously and he looks like that fried boy who stays out all night snorting okay and with the local goal play will forever be memorable but he comes for as one to go on as one of Marvel's greatest villain in the meantime Karen create a vampire cure for a infected human like herself and she invents a serum that can make the other vampire could at point my inner child. I can't wait to see some vampire go cap. Well, it has all of the darkness and your violence you would accept to see in a vampire superhero movie. Don't expect much in the way of humor like the Deadpool. Let keep a pretty serious one must. It's also very big 90s, so expect to see a gloomy atmosphere leader code any fight scene set to be 98 techno. I could not call this movie especially deep, but it's highly enjoyable to watch. All in all, Blade is a fun that gladfully violent action a movie and more importantly, it's a well-executed comic book movie that proved awe-generating and not a time when too many movies area built from flat TV-style visual of people standing around talking movie based on comic books represent one of the last best hope for visionary filmmaking. It's ironic that a comic which borrowed their early visual style from a movies should now be returning the favor. Blood-sailing Wesley Snipes as a killer of the vampire who is engaged in a session of the art is a movie that realizes high visual style. It uses an extreme camera angle, the bizarre costumes and sets, the exaggerated shadows, the confident cutting between a long shot and extreme close-up. It slams ahead in pure bizarrely imagery. Of course, anyone's positive potentially attending the film in the hope of our reason storyline is going to be disappointed. Better to see in a dark comic book term as an episode in a mastermade in which events settle as confirmation is not a quite end of thing because it has to be another issue next month. That is an award meaning a real word played based on Marvel's comic hero is played by Snipes as a man on a border between a human and vampire. Resignation story. His mother was bitten by a vampire while pregnant infecting her child but lived in a street until being adopted by a man named Whistler who masterminded a lonely war vampire. No Blade is to be manhood is a separate head of the battle as vampires separate their influences through the major cities for now achieve gathering ground a secret after a dig victim are lured by the promises of forbidden trail only to be evident and converted. The movie is built around a series of misdirection scene. The first one featured an abducted of an old friend from 1970s Hong Kong movie. The Flying Keen to Thesa is a knife-edge combined and returned to its owner. Very neat. Blood in Kenta a vampire brought in for emergency treatment. He saved, he returned her to be Whistler's secret lab for an injection of liquid garlic which gives her a fighting chance. Blade himself flies under a daily reprieve. Whistler's serum keeps him on the human side. Although he may be building up a resistance to it. Arid and GI blood area the forces of vampirism represented by his army Deacon Frost. There's a lot of mythology underlying a forest blam including the evocation of an ancient vampire god who may return to lead a creature in their final quest. Setting for the climatic scene is Phantom Magic Vampire Temple where Blood must face everything in a titanic showdown. The movie directly by Stefan Norkijan is another in a recent group of New Orleans cinema movies that combine comic book imagery, Nor universes and a visual heritage of German experiences. Some would rank it from Dark City and Spawn. This material is obviously moving in the direction of pure animation, which is the talk and the often so evoke in theory or some short hair use effects to evoke animation freedom from gravity and their physical law. Notice for example in broken shot where Blina in his arms and make an improbable leap from a high window to a far rooftop. Can't be done, especially not with Amos seemingly floating down in a midair to a safe landing, but a dreamlike feel of a step is effective. Wesley Snipes understand the material from the inside out and makes an effective Blade because he know the key ingredients in any interesting a superhero is not omnipotent by a vulnerability. There's always a kind of sadness underlying the personality of the greatest superhero who have been given great knowledge and gift, but few can slash in their battle and give us the funnel seem to be on the villain's side by boarding those feelings. Sniper's Blade as a given the movie that as of emotional, without which it would simply be special effect. Of course you have to bring assumption to it yourself, preferably sympathy for the host comic book a superhero. To this is the kind of movie that gets better at the movie who need about the genre. You might expect a mono named Blood would be a handing out prize at a gal game somewhere in Indiana, but a fan had different plan in the Marvel universe. Blood is a worker hellbent on dismantling the entire empire and while avoiding on his scarf on his leader symbol. In a movie trilogy from New Orleans, the titular character is played by the Wesley Snipes and needed to play a more brooding demi-vamp. The first installment in the Blood trilogy continues to entertain more than it 2 decades later. Many other vampires hunting over have attempted to emulate in 1998 films League or packaging in June and avenues of Marvel Studio bringing their own Blade into default. The time is right to be revealing and waxing in a crimson-soaked glory around a time vampires are exporting like angry sorcerers from Big Trouble in Little China. You may be boring the film final floor plot point. After all, the primary villain taken from Stefan Gerov taps into some cryptic method in order to achieve his endgame. We have not exactly translated all the ancient vampire, but we have a good idea of what Mr. Force is to be. It's quite a mysterious game. Let's finally get to be heard of what happened to another Blood Cure Blood. For Chief today drives his Namia from the very two he uses to filthy a blood-sucking antagonist. A blood prefer to his enemy with an aside attached titanium bloody reduces vampire to be fluttering of carbon, the anger flowing that he was killing beaten well. Desert BL's mother was attacked by a vampire when she was pregnant with him. That fear and hatred for Brad is clogged in Chelsea because of his ability to walk in the sunlight without bursting into the flame. The vampire's physical set and girl agility is also his to wield anger under very more circumstances, making Blade's Blood a highly desirably commentary. It is important to know exactly what a type of creature Blood is in order to understand why his enemy want to get their hands on him so badly. It is noted just for weakness. It's also an attempted to be improved their car's existence. Before Blades introduces those to overhaul hero, we get a crash courses in Vampiricus edition. A man is dragged along by a friend Tassija into a meat packing plant. If you are asking yourself what type of meat, then you're asking the right question. The unwittingly appetizer of a man continued to follow the vampire into her letter despite all sign pointing to danger. Even a copse on a meat block cannot deter this man from descending Futuria into an underground nightclub onward by so more than an aggressive kiss. Ansia inside the dawn. A selfie are introduced us to an apathetic nightmare. The strobe light illuminating a CO father secondly alert and dead chairs a fire sprinkler system rains on the Humana Blood. The scene laid out before is now just about sex appeal and upcoming action sequences that will work as part of films entirely. It's also an introduction to the mindset of the primarily antagonist. They come for us. There's some quick glimpses of Ross among the lustful Dancia crew and a lighter conversation inform us that entire club is his establishment rather than hiding in the shadow like his empire. Breton Frost chosen to be pushed further into the home and a population. The best lured to a heart end at the nightclub is a sprinkle system dip. It last few drop of the holy globin Asabl into the room after a dazzling display of the swordmanship ascended by vampire bursting into the cloud of glowing gas. Blade is not his killing Asabi by nailing Forresta left in it. Just before law enforcement arrived, a Boltos is an incidency drives at a vampa and sneak auditor noticed. Officers Thana enter the scene. Setting the scene is what leads BL to his greatest success in the storyline. Dr. Karina Jensen's her knowledge of the hematologia is extremely valuable in the Blade as a battle and of vampire apocalypses. Luckily for our hero, Dr. Jensen happened to be in the room when Queen's star body is being examined. When Queen wakes up from his little charcoal nap, humanities think he stayed into all the neck can find. Dr. Jensen's included Blade is at the hospital to finish off a Queen and stomach across a wanted. Dr. rather than leaving her to be deal with her found glad decided to take her along with him, mostly because Dr. Jensen's remind him of his mother, shown by a flashback to the brief moment after she gave birth to him, a day we definitely all remember. Once back at Blair's safe house, Garena is introduced to the vampire's hunter friend, Abraham Whistler. The two give her a quick dump about a war between the vampire and human. The guess is that vampire are bad and they kill a human. More pressing is the fact that a Dr. Jensen has been beaten and the shard of garlic they bump into her brain is not guaranteed to stop the process of the vampire transformation. There are two possible reactions. The doctor could have pain feeling body ache for several days, or she could become thirsty for it very liquid. She swore to keep inside of people while blood trailing can that she's basically damned forces are facing the music as well. The Foy Blade has vampire elder in DC. Centuries of story are being foreseen to venture into the business of blood-fueled nightclub for us to see his kind also unite fuller rules of the planet. It is obvious that he also has a chip on his daughter, no doubt seeming from the elder's desert hema for his ell of vampiric purity, given that he was not born a vampire. The combination of daddy's issue and a superiority complex result in process a well-laid brain involved in A_A. The grip and long lost Proheric. The ideas of the Vampire Council have been around for a long time, given how slowly vampires we can safely assume it takes many centuries for them to obtain an APRA. It would stand to reason that a new iPhone technological advances area mystical to elder life for the hunted during the Shakespeare's era. So it's said that the ancient secreture is written in a dead language that can never be translated. They see it as a house load, but Fro has something Wasta Grand perhaps cannot understand. A computer from 1998 Frost is able to be used as software, computing power to sift through the ancient symbol and uncover the metrical tale of Mgra. For what that would release the blood god named Ilamgra. The metrical creature's area released would give the power needed for a vampire to rise up and take their place of rulers of the planet. The ritual calls for the well purple blood pump, and if Froze knows just where to be some. The Elder Council, the top draw, would never allow for such a cup, so Frost drags Hema out to be Beach Beast and he forces the Elder Vampire to be a Sunrise. Roz and his gang sit safely cokened in a motorcycle helmet and lead to Sedent. Now there's only one major ingredient, so they need to be enlarged. Bladia himself Black's safe house. Dr. Jensen Isa refusing to accept her pet as a newborn vampire. She has not undergone a transition yet, but Blade insists and she will change eventually and had best prepared accordingly in order to help her face a new phone application. They hand her a gun and send her on her merry way. When Karen arrives home, she is made with a familiar, which is exactly what blood is much to the doctor's charge. Blair uses her web to uncover another lead. Dr. Jensen is pretty above the bed, but she can't deny it work. Not only she is a 30 and she need to be with a vampire hunter in order to stay alive, but the shift in Vina is also what lead to the vampire Chivia. But a book of the Erbas is a house. The vampire Bible consists of the ancient takes a visa fra and a certain chart with a blob of Imperium. He gives Blood all the information he need to now know that his own blood is vital and bringing Frostland to fruition. The illogical move would be to wide capture via any obvious trap. there's a big problem there. The vampires are just so good at taking Blade off. Slowly morphing into one of the undead is a fate Garden is unwilling to accept. Induction into a new world of blood I say unacceptably, and she means to use her own knowledge of blood to help the transformation. The working conditions in the vampire hunting crew was a warehouse are not exactly ideal for the enactment of the scientific method. The doctors return to her workplace and with an entire laboratory of Thea equipment that would make Bioli movie in New York struggle. Got to be because he her gives blood some neutral that could make victory possible in order to saturate his own thirst, where uses a serum in place of actually human blood. This method is becoming less effective as time goes on. By now the soldier of mission has an on his side. Karen gets to work on a cure of herself and a new serum for Blade. The scientific journey gives her rise to some will fail as new phone weaponry for Blade. Willie experimenting on vampire blood. It discovered that it exploded in a contact. Its potent reaction that AEA referentively call for weaponization. The crew lead to be and inserted them into what can only be described as combat sins, whatever you would call them. The accidental discovery of this new weapon is the only reason Toa does not prey to an powerful race of Thea-hungry vampires. Blade is known as a Diewalker and it stands reason. We get to see him out on a sunlight stone. Thea heroes outrunning in rain when he come upon a vampire. Another vampire rise unable to be in the sunlight without having their brush melt off and bursting into the flame. The hero-villain conversation ends with Fro tossing a girl into Rada where she nearly cares flawed into above with either no eyeball or no breaks. Blade does what heroes do and saves her. But a dissection force hopia for her has already been put into motion. The vampires have discovered where Whistler and Blade's Stra and Walker is out by they place it. Senator carefully laid pieces of frozen plant in order to unleash a love mamser blood, and he certainly won't give Ida willingly a walking the beer is never recommended, but in this case how it works purporting a forward in his attempt to reinforce our hero. It's actually not so much an attempt as it is a will success to vampire leave a man glare Whistler behind it to slow the death. Blade is able to be saved goodbye, but he's so angry that he knowing into a trip played by force. The vampire hunter is able to put his new weapon on display by playing empty ceilings into the chest and skull of some undead security guard. Pulga Isa don't look at explosion, so he further into the vampire than while Istafita explored into a goofy phone chain of blood behind him. There are few things that go distract the current version of the veins. Actually, we can say there's so lonely venting and Fro has exactly that mountain play mommy woman is Alivia and well chilling in her penthouse and Isa sleeping on Como Global Mountain. The brief stand unit of unwaiting here long enough for Fro and his gang to be temporarily put him out of the commission, subsequently depriving Blade of his serum began blood and causes a chance to envelop him. Blood gods always come with a specific instruction in your invisible Silria body be reasonably attainable. For example, burning themselves to warm a trigger girl release it alive for more than a month. Leadermatic the ritual to release Lomkara involves an ancient temple built for his sole persona purpose. Frost took control of the vampire council not just because he resented but also because his blood and a god ritual require 12 pure blood. Each of the natural born vampire must be positioned in the temp among a series of glyphs. At the top of the wind temple Isa a chamber made likely to house our fiery blade. In 1998 was a good year for us. Niplia quickly an orange action hero. His Rolia as play sparked a franchise with a high-p debut brought right mix of Meralodaker and a Nog approaches ass-kicking into his comic book character turned film of franchisee Blanche inspired to more sequel and a short live TV series without Wesley Dicka was great by the younger Stefan S. The vampire had a new leader with his latest a night smart as approach to kicking some juice into the old row with some Ravia inspired. The film was produced by a new Linea Cinema and Imaginary Forces. Imaginary Forces previously only limited to it providing great title sequences of new horror film properties. Blade is the only Jaywalker. He was banned from a murderer who was just beaten before prayer to give labor. He is much feared. The advantage is that he is not affected by sunlight like the rest of his kind. He also seemed to be able to be handled garlic pretty well while possessing the vampire set. Blade is a vampire hunter who visited the world out of evil masses. His approach has always been of slaying vampire on side. It probably does not hurt that he fight like a ninja. As we come into our introduction to the Blade film, we are taken into mid-progress. Those nasty empire to play with their food of which luring unexpected body into an all-night dance room appear to do dirt trick. I in fact love this intro which mark it as one of my favorite of a vampire film. Actress Atraki Lord as equal mark of brief cameo as he brings her sketch into the air while it chants the overhead water welts begin to shower dark road and pure-blooded the vampire shadow council is concerned led by the one of the elders AEO claimed that a low profit profile has been a reason for their losing existencia with the human a simple coexistencia force has a little plan. He need to dominate asps. It will be led by an ancient ritual that will unleash the ultimate power, the blood go mag. The ritual has long been kept in secrets protected by undishable God but with the help of a modern technology, Ross is on the verge of discovery. The ritual is to be performed in location called Temple of Eternal Night. The film itself uses a modern style of the presentation using perspective shot first edit and close-up zoom early enough. Blade received the mixer review since outcome is really measured on a financial scale rather than a review scale and Loki episode 4 Marvel Cinematic universally confirmed that Blade will have one of its most powerful character. During San Diego Comic-Con in 2019, a Marvel announced I Live with Star Asa the Dead half-human and half-vampire the upcoming movie. The new film is a reboot of the Blair character who was first brought into life on the big screen by Wesley Snipes in 1998. Marvella was widely praised for the casting Alia an Oscar-winning actor and Snap even made a point of sporting the decision model Marvel previously the existence of vampire and turn a big wooden fork the weapon seemed to be fairly pointless a cog has a solution the character says it's not useful unless someone fighting off vampire. There was a hotel together. First and foremost, the vampire landing to a rower is all joke at the time. Ida simply seemed like a reference to Beavid's popular vampire-centric comedy. What we do in Shadow with the announcement of Blade the Jokia also seemed to be a note to be vampire existing in MCU. Loki episode 4 to be L or vampire in Marvel movies. Confirming Blade will be a formidable character. In the episode, Davian's authority they capture both Home Lokia and Sophia Day putting them in separate holding area. In a meeting with the Jew on Wilson's Myos asked to skip speaker with Lady Loki but get denied. He then makes an interesting comment to me Hunter B15, you know we brought in great a Titan vampire. Why is it to our fancy demigod or such a pan and says Moya Sadachar moment when it come to the event of the Korean Titans are powerful a creature in Dio and Moya slant ports a vampire. Raj them besides being Marvel Force and Titan are both much stronger than human. The alien Richessa races also seemingly have the ability to handle Infinity Stone. George Belina Tinos is an outlier when it come to be sailing from Titan. He is strong enough to be survived snapping his finger without Infinity Stone on his gun failed. Also grieve a Power Stone with his bare hand in the Guardian of the Galaxy. In the Loki same. Mobius is clearly writing of the most dangerous creature. He can think of when vampires are near at the top of the list, as powerful as vampire may be in the MCU. Blade is even stronger. He can go in sunlight and he is immune to be vampires. Additionally, Blade is super sad, guilty and power. Simply put, Blade has a vampire sat and avoid many of their weakness. Beside his super ability, he's skilled fighter and talented at swinging a vampire alongside Titan and Greed. Movie Fake has announced that Ryan upcoming rated Deadpool prequel is only a rated movie that Marvel is planning to make yet anytime soon. suggesting that a new Blade movie will be rated PG-13 like the rest of the MCU. That might not be such a great idea. The 3-movie and Wesley Snipes Blade trilogy where we rated Hera and we endless one, especially in the hand of the Tal Joro who made Blade section sequences of blood are so delighted. Also use a rating to add performances in on a liner like always with Rice neck appeal. Kevin Feige has said that coming third pirate movie in the only rated R foot in Marvelous Horizon writer, and this is a smart movie that could easily the president of the MCU to release a bunch of rated R movies like A Bird of Prey and 2019 Hellboy reboot have shown that the rating can easily be used as a crutch for violence and excessive profanity. The MCA should not be overshooted. Ultra gore can easily be used excessively like in the sequel. A certain level of gore is necessarily far from bad story. It's impossible to make a movie about blood-sucking undead without a good deal of half and sucking blood. Technically, A Blade is not a story about vampire. It's a story about a vampire slayer living in a vampire and 5 world. But if anything, that story requires even more blood. That's a straightforward vampire stories. After more than a decade, MCU has a pretty well established one on that an aided movie would disrupt. Wesley Snipes had no obligation to fit into a wider universe, but A New Blood report will be an entry in the large franchise in the wider context of the MCU. It would make more sense of the blood to beat the PG-13 even if the character is better suited to an editing. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine was arguably the most popular character in the Fox and X-Men franchise from the beginning, but in the action scene always felt distracted by the PG-13 ratings because he has proven by Logan a guy with metal claw needs, and it goes for Blade whose solo movies will feel sanitized if the rating sensibility of his comic book is not translated to the second faithfully. The only downside of relating our comic book movies is that kids can't be watching them on a big screen unless they have a really goal, so their experiences are franchise is limited. Blood is one of the Marvel's most awesome character and MCU's youngest. This off his own adventure just as much as older fan essentially with their horror stories are horror, so Blade movies area horror movies above all. Dempsey Isa moving into the horror genre with a doctor set in the Mockavmas, so there's a precedent for the Blade to be a horror movie. Movies like Daughter and A Quiet Place have proven that a horror does not to be need or to be truly scary, but it helped Iron Man and Captain America has cleared up some room in the lineup, and Phase 4A is charging forward with a bunch of the new character. It will be interesting to see what the cast of the Fate Avenger movie like if late MCU adventure area dated PG-13. The character will be easier to integrate into the Avengers movie. There's probably one room for only a god among gods might as hero. From a studio's perspective, the drawback of unrated is that it does not get in front of as many years as an PG-13 movie. So, it does not have such box of success, but just like that Polar Blade movie does not need to be cost $200 million movie about a day walking and vampire hunter could be produced for around $50 million, which significantly lower the risk of fenring her. The main appeal of directing is the creative freedom to allow, but that freedom can be a bad thing if we did recklessly. There's an unnecessarily glory scene of the bird of rep that did not need to be exist, in which one McGregor cuts off a man's face. The restriction of the PG-13 rating can sometimes result in a strange movie because a filmmaker can't rely on violence and profanity to get your audience's attention. V has announced that old upcoming rated Deadpool 3 is the only rated movie that Marvel is planning to make anytime soon, suggesting that a new Blade movie will be rated PG-13 like the rest of the MCU. That might not be such a great idea. The 3-movie and Wesley Snipes Blade trilogy, a very dark and never-endless film, especially in the event of the Talu made bladed section sequences area bullet-soaked delight. Snipe also use a rating R to profane on a liner like some murder are always trying to scared a film which have to be that fine. The character Kevin Feige has said that the upcoming third movie is only a rated for Marvel's Horizon writer, and this is a smart movie. Deadpool 3 could easily set a precedent for them to release a bunch of rated movies like Bird of Prey and 19 Hellboy. A report have shown that rating R can easily be used as a charge for gracious violence and excessive for profanity. R can easily be used excessively like in the sequel. Plus again level of God is necessary for vampire story. It's impossible to make a movie about a blood-sucking undead without a good deal of his own sucking blood. Technically, a Blade is not a story about vampire. It's a story about a vampire slayer living in a vampire life. What if anything that a story require even more blood and a certain forward vampire stories. After more than a decade, MCU has a pretty well-established note that a narrated movie would disrupt. Wesley Snipes movie essay had no obligation to fit into a wider universe. But the new Blade report will be an entry in a larger franchise in a wider context of MCU. It would make more sense if the Blade report to be PG-131. Is a character has better shown to be an art here. The Checkman's girlfriend was arguably the most popular character in a franchise from the beginning, but his action scene always felt restricted by the PG-13 rating because as promoted relation. The same goes for Blade. Those solo movies will feel sanitized if the rated sensibility of his comic book is not translated to disagreeing fearfully. The only rooms with the retail comic book movies is that kids can't watch them on the big screen unless they have a really cool parent, so the experience of the franchise is limited. Blood is one of the Marvel most awesome character, and MCU's young got his desire to enjoy his own sex adventure just as much as an older film. Essentially, we hear her theory of the Imperi stories are horror stories. Two Bladia movies are horror movies above all. The MCU is moving into the horror genre in the multiverse ultimatus, so there is a precedent for the Blade to be a horror movie. Now that the Iron Man and Captain America has cleared up some room in the lineup, and Phase 4 is charging forward with a bunch of the new character, it will be interesting to see what the fifth adventure movies like look like. If late MCU headed PG-13, the character will be easier to integrate into the adventure movie. There's probably only room for rotated or will it go among mo from a studio perspective. The drawback of a rated movie is it does not get front of as many eyes as on a PG-13 movie, so it does not have much chance of box office success. But just like Deadpool, a great movie does not need to be cost $100 million. A movie about a daywalker vampire hunter could be produced for around $50 million, which significantly lower the risk of an rating. The main appeal of the rating are the creative freedom is allow, but the freedom can't be lab if they build it recklessly. There's necessarily go in a bird of the prey that did not need to exist in of a man's face. The restriction of the PG-13 rating can sometimes result in a stronger movie because of filmmakers related violence and profanity to carry audience attention. Wesley Snipes has an opinion about MCU Blade report. Note: a reading and R rating got some weight. In 2011, Marvel was given back the right to be Blade finish franchise, and interest in the bragging Blade into MCU has been ongoing since 2016, with various production pushback delaying in a report timeline. Blade can expect a late 2023 or mid 2024 release at the time of writing. Still, while reduction form Blade board is far from being in the infancy, the film is yet to begin shooting. With that in mind, V's potential rating remain the subject of much speculation. Ramsey is yet to be produced and rated a project, but it's all heading toward a generally darker property. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, a horror-leaning pushed into a PG-13 rating, is showing that MCU was willing to move in a more sinister direction even before real Multiverse of the Madness. Howard McHugh has still used the darker tonal approach before Captain America Avengers Soldier tackled the theme regarding that animated gun mind control, while Avengers Infinity War was not all light in the treatment man of killing half of the universe's population, and even compounded by Avenger and came directly processing at the trauma. Meanwhile, MCU Disney Plus show like Vision and Moon Knight have a more recently approached supernatural element, will also attempt to explore real more near mature themes regarding grief and mental illness. With this kind of build-up, her report is becoming more appropriate for the MCU. However, might not be necessarily in this vampire goa and violence of film from promises. Snip made his opinion on the blood rating are known in an interview with the comic book comment, in which he stated that as long as blood is not true and are planning to be subject matter the plot and award that's created, and our rating may not be necessarily sincere. The likes of Detect Lone, This Domia Patrol and Amazon's Prime have Madia rated superhero properties more accepted. A Blade report with less of a rating, a limitation on its violence would be more marketably today. However, Snating document carry all the more weight considering that the original Blade trilogy was rating a hard itself. The mixed Blade reporter should certainly aim for at least a hard PG-13 if it so honor the subject's material excessively violent mature. However, it also does not need to be forced in narrating for the sake of the promising that violence leaving so believing on Blade score quality. With that said, the MCU should not repeat and Blackwid's sake of dividing target in order to be maintained and P13 rating a Blade needs to approach and auditing carefully that go in that direction. Also I point out, Blade's developer should hold more purity than action. It should not be edited or for the sake of providing gruesome sex and violence. So far such as an approach into the transparent of a marketing tactic. However, MCU should also widening the watering Blade known for the sake of a PG-13 rating as it has with a previous pro project like the aforementioned Black Widow. Our rated up should not all be fun and highly anticipated, especially to be a first MCU film with a rating of an with its expected references from the Snip trilogy. Doom's Blade still has glory. All reigning legacy to uphold Doom's future hold rich promises after earning back Blade's ride and this violent subject material make it a perfect for and a rating. Still the MCU should not pursue the rating by forging Blade's core character and story element with that in mind. Potential rating remain a subjective much subject. The MCU is yet to be produced and rating a project that is heading toward a generally darker properties. Marvel concept artist revealed about Blair's alternate MCU costume looked during the Deadpool and Wolverine development. Wesley Snipes made his MCU debut as one of Deadpool and Wolverine's multiverse characters appearing in the Void as a pronoun Blade variant who joins forces with other survivors to oppose Nova. Blade 40 Cassandra Nova's pinman Havia Deadpool and Rita and one of the Deadpool and Wolverine's funniest Easter egg in the form of a Jabba at Mix Blade on Instagram. Marvel concept artist is Fazbird shares a few pieces of the Red Bull and a Wolverine concept art featuring Wesley Snipes Blade. Bird's images include a Bladia costume that looks similar to the Onya the Vampire Hunter in 1998 Blade movie. I inspire soda trench coat and a leader outfit. Check out our images below. BL's new costume which is a black nature crunch coat and replaces it with a armor blade. Its in Blade variant was thrown with a blood thinity outfit and later updated his claw with armor he designed in the Void or if he spent more than 20 years fighting vampire and upgrading his calcium until he was born and thrown into the Void. Away Blood Ice clearly older and chose to extend agility for protection. Blade's concept art costume would have been dead at very different backstory. Deadpool and Wolf friends use any of this look. Wesley Snipes Blade probably would have had more extravagant experiences in the between of the event. A poorly received Blade. Trinity and his battle against Himanoa's forces from mastering the Katana or developing the military skill and possibly becoming a vampire killing players. Blade's alternate costume provide material for other variants somewhere out here in the world multiverses. Williams Blade movie experiencing some turmoil. Marvel would be wise to be considerate of our failures and successes of the iconic Wesley Snipes trilogy. The MCU's Blade introduces the famed vampire hunting a superhero into the MCU timeline. After Wesley Snipes Blade made fancy cameo appearances in Deadpool and Wolf of Frank, this opened up questions about a snapper returning for the other Blade movie or even replacing them as a franchisee new Blade. These are completely speculative, but there are certainly a lesson to learn from the Snap iconic trilogy. The original play starring a Wesley Snipes was in the superhero genre released between the 1998 and 2004. The film carved out of niche body blinding action horror and comic book element in a way that had already been before. Snapsy portrayal half Blade half Empire half human barrier on a mission to read the word every vampire was both iconic and definitive. One of the key reasons the original Blade trilogy succeeded was its commitment to a genuine horror. The film did not shy away from exploring the darker, more terrifying aspect from the vampire mythos which item apart from the typical superhero fear. The vampire in the trilogy were not just anime to be vanquished, there were monster in the very sense of the world dripping with his men and river. The airy atmosphere unsettling of the imagery and gives some scene of the bloodshed made up of trilogy a unique fusion of horror and action for MCS a way to be resonate of the original trilogy. It's must embarrass this horror element fully while MCU are known for the light-hearted tone and the family-friendly content, the Blade movie would benefit from a darker approach with success in horror and few superhero stories such as Drive, Strange and the Multiverse are in Madness. There is potential for the MCU to push all boundaries with a Blade. In the original Bluetology, Abraham Whistler was more than just some sharded to Blade. He was emotional anchor of the series. Whistler's graphed inner tragic backstory and deep sense of purpose area provided a conscious balance to Black's often isolated nature. Less humanized the beard, offering glimpses into the heart of the vampire hunter that might otherwise remain a hidden beneath exterior. This dynamic was crucial in making Blade a relatably and compelling character rather than just a heartless killing machine. While the MCU's Blade to be captured the same emotional depth, it needs a character like Whistler to serve as Blair's confident adventure and moral complex without a strong supporting character like Whistler. The new Blade is losing the emotional core that made the original film as a Navy oars. One of the aspects that made Wesley Snipes to be memorable was his unapologeticness. Blade was not your typical hero. He was a relentless cold-blooded warrior driven by a singular mission to eradicate a vampire. This anti-hero person set him apart from other superhero out and made him stand-out character. General Blade was not concerned with the saving of the world on upholding justice in a traditional sense. His motivation were deeply personal, rooted in obedience and survival. For McBlair to be successful, it must avoid turning Blade into a conventional marvel. He should not be another bright shiny who fight for the greater good with a grave and smell. Instead, Blade should remain a complex, morally ambiguous whose methods are often brutal and immersive. By embarrassing Blade as an heroic nature, the MCU can create a film that offers something different from its usual fare. The Blade trilogy was known for its stylish and intense fight scene, which were some of the most memorable aspects. Wesley Snipes trained martial art, but a level of physicality and precision to be role that made the Blade's combat sequences thrilling to watch. Whether Ida was a high-octane shot in a vampire nightclub or a one-on-one duel made a powerful vampire, the fine work with our level of detail and creativity that set them apart from action film of the era. Damu's Blade must leave equally impressive fight scene in an age where dices are accused to be a low-key battle. Damu's Blade should focus in a practical hand-to-hand combat that showcases the skill and agility of its protagonist. The fight choreography should be dynamic, virtual and visually striking, with a focus on creating the memorable moment that will stay with the audiences. The original Blade strategy was filled with the sense that commented Blade's status as an icon from his dramatic superhero landings, which originated in a Blade. So he is effortlessly catching the sunglasses in midair. These moments, combined with his distinctive red strange coat shades and weapon, created a visual identity that was iconic and instantly recognizable. Blade's look was a crucial part of this appeal, making him one of the most stylish and memorable model character. A similar effect with its Blade. The costume design, the way Blade moves and the way he interacts with his environment all play a role in the establishing his on-screen persona. The MCU show to be create moments that are as visually iconic as those in the original trilogy, ensuring their Blade style is a bold film class and unique. One of the defining characters of the original trilogy was a content which allowed a film to fully embrace the violent and glory of its subject matter. The blood-soaked battle, gruesome vampire that and dark adult area increased success, setting it apart from its more sanitized superhero contra. The ratings gave the filmmakers a freedom to be explored. Brutality of players work with the compromise, so with mix gradually exploring Arthia projects like the Deadpool and Wolverine. There is a real possibility that a new Blade could allow sword for the move to do justice to the character's brutal nature. It should not shy away from the violence and horror that defines Blade as a word, and Blade would allow filmmaker to push the boundaries of a typical Marvel movie and deliver a film that is due to the spirit of the comic and the original trilogy in its installment of the original Blade trilogy. that was supported by a cast of compelling character when the story and it provided an additional layer to the mad narrator, whether it was Big Seed in Blade 2 or a vampire hunter in Blade Atreides. These characters added up to Thea films and have to flesh out Blade's world. They serve as a foil, allies, and sometimes even antagonists. The new Blade movie will need a similarly strong supporting cast to keep Thea engaging and dynamic. Our well-rounded supporting cast can help to be shown. Also, Blade provide comic relief or introducing a new threat that tests his resolve by building a strong ensemble of characters around Blade. The MCU can preserve Blade's stoic nature while ancillary player drive the narrative forward, while the Blade made use of the CJ form for some of its more fantastical element. The most effective Empire effect was achieved through practical means. The intangibly physical presence of the Empire made more menacing and grounded in reality, enhancing the horror element of the film. In contrast, the faux sense of vampire, particularly in Blade trait, often feels less convincing and detracted from the overall impact of the sun. Practical effects such as makeup, prosthetics and animatronics allow for more visor and immersive experiences. The CGI struggle to be replicated at the time. Despite advances in technology, MCU's Blade would be wisely to be embarrassed practical effect for a vampire. While the CGI can be used to be argument search and sin, relying too heavily on its risk making the vampire feel less real and more cartoonish. Wesley SN is a one every cool character in the superhero cinema. SN brought a unique blend of the charisma, intensity and physicality to the role. His formula was defined by a calm collected dream, a man well dresses orbit and an unwavering sense of purpose. Blade was effortlessly cruel, whether he was slicing through vampire or delivering a deadpan online. This coolness become one of the defining thread of the character and a key reason for the trilogies and holding a popularity. Damu's play should seek to be replicated. This is no small feat given the high part by Snipe, but it has become intuitive character. The new Blade is a incredibly talented actor with a potential to bring his own brand of cool to be role. The key will be to allow Blade's character to be mentioned, his edge, his confidence and his unique style. One of the most more notorious moment in the Blades trilogy come from a Blade Trinity where Wesley Snipes were digitally altered as seen to behind the scene conflict. This incident has since become infamous not just for the awakening awkwardness of decision itself but also for the story behind it. The difficulties aside, particularly between his snap and the production team, to be situation where the actor refused to open his eyes during a trick, forcing the filmmakers to use the J to correct the issue. The result was a moment that felt daring and out of place, serving as a reminder of the sin relationship behind the scene. As a Blade to avoid similar fights, use Blade must foster a positive and collaborative working environment, ensuring good communication and respect between a cast and can prevent situation like the Onya that led to being infamous CJ as in a Play Trinity. A great opening scene sets a tone for the whole movie. Alvin Blade first at the horrific opening scene become iconic. The Blair centers on a Marvel character whose mother was bitten by a vampire while pregnant, resulting in a Blair being born a half vampire. The Blade movie trilogy follows his journey, blending horror and action, including some excellent fight choreography. The best movie opening scene look you immediately, and Blade does exactly that. A man is on a date with a mysterious woman who takes him to behave. Soon the sprinkles begin to pour. Blood as a portier turn out to be the vampire will the unfortunate men slip on the floor. He finds himself in front of blood, sportless and armed. The horror channel genre has some of the best movie opening scene of all time, but many great horror movie opener just needed to be terrifying. Blade had to be introduced a culture too. Vampires have been a popular horror movie subject for a decade, and the genre can feel Samuel Blood introduction to me. Hidden Vampire Raw instantly showed something interesting about their life. The scene has very little dialogue. Once the character entered a raw and yet a visual of the people dancing the blood unforgettable. In just 5 minutes establishes a word as a sleek and action-heavy tone for a movie and introduces Blade as a character. Unfortunately, a harsh reality of watching Blade that first scene is better than the last. Critics and idolists do not always agree on whether movie is good or not, and horror movie can be extremely polarizing. Critics spend Blood giving it a 59% a positive Rotten Tomatoes score. On the other hand, Audiences love our Joba action and the rated blood 78% positive. Critics also hated the next Blade movie and audiences felt similarly. While some horror movies have aired badly due to medicine-like outdated depiction of a group, there's a stereotype and bad writing. Blade has no deontology hold up well today, and really the special effect now look considerably dated. This the original movie film Ina the 1990 making it a fun and most logic was of in a while the antis Blade's reorder Pirida to be stuck in a development hell, only a scene that it should not try to recreate at his original movie's Blood Ran 1998. The iconic movement was an expert shock and it would be impossible to be replicated now, especially for after it appear to be referenced in an estancia floor scene Blade opening scene as a damn cut to be 1990. The characters are wearing cyberpunk style with sunglasses, tiny fabric and a very fanboard, while the song used Ina the techno confusion by New Order. Era culture was a 1990s staple, so even recreating the moment in a modern club would feel out of place. Leaving the opening scene as an unbeatable moment in a horror, based on a Disco Decay's comic book written by Marvel called Wolfmana and illustrated by Jan Golan. This late 90s film highlights several effective horror movie style, Joan blazing martial arts sequences, but remain notable and a noble to do for decade attempt to be the vampire and a vampire lord of million aids. More than that, and from the perspective of a DKI lecture navigation film, see on issue of Fairies in a Modern America in Blade. A vampire not be romantic Willie rescue tragic in Blade of any risey interview without vampire 1984 or Forever Night 1982 to 1986. Nora R.J. Bagasi from Dusk Till Dawn 1986 and John Blair appeared in the Unproposed, full a reflection of the case conspiracy phobia and ended the surface fear on Encina. Rich Cable's Pulling the Scene in America. Blade commences on 1986 and the dawn of the culture era in Americana history. A baby is born to an African American woman who has been bitten by vampires. Some 30 years later, at the counterculture moment, Mendes that a big business again during the Decompona, and that child that orphan is a monarch called Blade. The Emperor human hybrida is also known as a daywalker in some circle because of the human ability to survive in sunlight and the help of his adventure and friend, Whistler Blade. No wages and wear and Gazi undead sorcia infesting the lone. After interrupting the vampire here, he called Bloodpota named Karen from a vampire gangster, and it then began to reinvestigate a latest scheme of Empire World. Deacon Frosta forces are attempting to bring about a brand of undead buying an ancient vampire. This attempted to resurrection and not only raises blood but is a leader of the status quo seeking vampire nation. Finally, Fro's attempt to reuse bread's a very low blood to be bring about Olamara's ascension. The character of B, for all intent and a purpose a superhero, first came to life via in the Marvel The Tomb of Dracula issue 18 in the 1972. Originally he was a tough-talking Shanga representation of the black fashion or era film. In iconic Blade's enemy was Anna Order White Shirt Deacon Frost and young Arabella in upsided film who share his name. Right, I guess they do have the full body sword going on. Still these guys sleep in a ridiculous hyperbolic pressure jambra. The vampire also take a pair of Bira and the pull of the fangs out of the Gaia with Distratara is a pretty awesome be of old school gangster supernatural villain white of symbolic that is pretty cool. Bladia takes a segment from the Book of Thea Erebus to Whistler where he the sum of the blood god ritual and Karenina hospital with hospital machinery that she personally threw into a drug and it brought to be blood a rescue. In here attempt to create a vampire curia happened upon a compound that makes a vampire blood explode. This will be used it to be great effect later. There is the fact that his movie just introduces an item that makes vampire explode in hilarious bordigers. It's like getting that the last update in a video game, and because Blade has this and a movie goes on for another 40 minutes with 2 more sequel, you would think that would be the game changer. Meanwhile, Karen figured out that a Whistler has cancer because Whistler's coughs are loud. Whistler in return find out that Karen has a few days at most go before becoming a full-fledged vampire where he is decomposed with desired manner. Blade goes out to buy out a newspaper and ends up in a standoff with Deacon Froze, who's taken a little girl as a hostage. When Blade refuses to come in a willing throw the girl into traffic, and Blade physically ignored her until a car is like 5 seconds away from hitting her. Those were the danger you face before you could get your news on internet. Say what you want about brain dying, but at least I'd cut on vampire hostage. Gray says the back Blade as you car developed a curia for people who have been turned into a vampire. Alto it won't work on born a vampire because born vampire have it also part of the giant makeup probably bull. Then Frost in the bunch of the vampire show still car because the movie needs the damsel in distress and a completely ruined Whistler and screw out at the majority. A Blaze rescue when Bladia gets back in her finds a bunch of body as if Froze familiar and a completely messed up Whistler who makes leave his gun just so he can avoid himself out of the enormous amount of pain. John League and his boys rolled at him on Joe. Kris again in retrospect. This is maybe the most hilarious part of this entire movie, that destroy Whistler. He's a bloody mess and give him to choice to become what he hates or kill himself, and he chooses a letter. Please, it's been a while since I have seen it, but I am pretty sure that the opening sequences of Blood choice about bringing blood back to life and curing him vampirism. I do think he finally dies with Blade trying it so that the Blade can start hanging out with a nerd stalker, but hell host Josiah would not come back in Blade form. Made and uses his material in the Blood cap to create a series that containing a formula Karen created that blows off vampire blood. Karen's forest is still a long waiting for Blade, and she decided to start provoking him by pointing out that she is he was not a born vampire, even offering him to be cured. She is a creative Bephoria and talks about how Lama is going to make everyone into a vampire across the earth, which don't like a pretty awful a deal for vampire sense and don't have a damn thing to it. He also point out that a Blair's blood is the key ingredient. I guess since vampire philosopher thousands of years ago figured a Dua Walker would show up at some point. See, there's a thing a vampire having a 100% accurate trophy case is divine by magic Wania that's totally acceptable because just by introducing vampire area establishing that magic exists between you make vampirism a virus that can be cured if a reasonable intelligent Vertoa think about it for literally 2 days and to say that they are just allergic to a garlic and have really sensitive skin, so that is ultraviolet light that hurt them and not be purifying light out of there. Then you kind of lose the ability to go. But ancient magic prophecies is totally legal. Unless I just figure that out all pretty good that somebody would bite a pregnant woman eventually. I guess, which seems like a safe beta enough timeline. The movie Sly Inconsistenta and his relationship between the scientia and magic. BL shows up at her Forsessa compound to be rescue Karen loaded with a vampire killing some and crashes Ida through the front door on a motorcycle like his drive before shooting up the entire lobby. Even the human who work for them. He fired some kung fu vampire and given them the serum and exploded in a totally glossy fashion. He goes to a door and enters a white room to meet the architect. Has no vampire mom, and then he becomes a superhero movie. Rose show up and has it bitten with taser nadstick and tells him that he bite his mom and actually created Blade as well. At least have already established that Blade has a whatever unholy reason of a frankly a clear memory of his birth, so he cannot remember what his mom looked like, and Shay has not got age because he's vampire. But how does she know Blaze her kid? Shay has not seen him in her year. How does soon get out to be middle of some random desire to be an underground? The leader of the 12 glance or whatever area placed in circle, and as Karen finally sees her way out of the vampire's boyfriend, the ritual begins for his girlfriend Gata space with a smart talking the land leader and his trade up stake him via the troll, while Karen goes and sessa blood after he's already given a holy CEH of blood, forcing him to be freed up have her to be regained. A hair to place blood is already moving to a circulatory robber vampire machina on the leader said. Meanwhile Karen's repeatedly asking where to stop sucking our blood, except he won't, which is kinda of uncomfortably, but she does not use say word, so we can assume she was actually okay with it, and if nothing else is not quite as uncomfortable as Blaze trying to seduce him and rubbing her face all upon his mouth while she's tied up in the Irona blade. Just as Blaze they stop sucking the blood and it again is set. A big giant drop of blood falls on Deacon, transforming him into a Lomgra, where he fight his mother as Karen goes to try to stop the ritual which is now causing a bunch of crazy electricity to come out of everybody's forehead. Then as blood to take his own mother he drag a leader Aaron into flying skeleton Theta Frost and he transformed him into a Deanna Frost without it's like the end of the Reg arc what we Empire and Summa and nowhere near as good as that sounded. To be honest, I would probably pay decent money to see a vision operator with a Wesley Snipes and stuff and draft Tarasa will not as a movie but definitely in a Broadway. Then BL shown up easily Thessy Potatoes Don Lake with a dry fire and it gets into a badass car fight where he totally pee around like everybody in this scene fight like one of the Jokers gone for Batman 89 and a Karen kills for his girlfriend with a vampire exploding Mag the girl's head exploding because of paper and Garlica is seriously one of the best moments in the central movie. There is not hearing about it, that is not pure ridiculous insanity. Her head exploded because of having paper subbed into her mode. Ia can't even write a joke about it because I am paralyzed by all possibilities. After he is written up, alone with a sweet 25x combo and double grapple taking it down, he gets into a SWAT fight with a Deacon for it and cut him in half. Blaze a fight with him for a bite and eventually throws his word. He first into a Kraga in the wall next to his vampire exploded so that he hit safely eventually goes off and cuts Bordok's word and the serum free from the wall. Blade throws some of the serum at Forest Boses and gives a movie unquestionably signature line. Summer murders area always trying to ice as scared. Rosie extra Blade and Karen go outside and a Blade asks to Karen to cure because someone needs to be around to kill a ashhole vampire, especially in Russia where we have an epilogue where Blade was a woman from the Russian vampire. The end. To be honest, it's a pretty ending, though it does continue with the movie's a theme of Florian Sandy and hilariously a gold movie like Red cutting of Dan's leg head and catching his own sunglasses as a Jew around him and the fact that Froze pulls a cat out of the freaking Ita was the right choices given the alternative. But flip side to that, I said that this movie big ending is what we watch at Jude who has been fighting a vampire for 2 car fighter vampire. This is a fight that goes on a little longer than the other has the added big bonus of having their sword explode into this spark every time they hit each other like the first season of Power Ringer and it's in with a last minute MacGuffin rather than anything that has to do with the two doing the actual. Some murders are always trying to be as scared of it which is maybe the best thing that Sunnyway in movie ever said. Honestly, the cast in the movie is a great like it was nowhere near a murderous role of the great actor. That was a dark night. But everyone in this movie is absolutely perfect for their role. The knife is a great as a tough nail badass. Dur plays Sam Armianda informable perfectly and Donor League is just great as a guy you want to be punched in the face for this entire movie. The scene where Log is telling a Deacon for what a super by D-Blade into talking about all his awesome movie and a Dwarf goes along with his for second and then just now is genuinely hilarious. A villain moment that is just one night relentlessly there is no fat. Every element comes together not unlike the later work on Batman Begin and much like that film's obsession with fear, this Onya has an obsession with Thea like everyone in this movie. Maybe it's not good, but they're fun. You would also post to knock the sheer style of this movie. It's full of great stuff. I know that front. I mean, the blood rave at the beginning is dumb at hell. But it's such a great visual of crazy vampire dead. I love how it blend good fashion wire work with all the crazy head exploding special effect. In a way he is showing horror element as our job as a Batman and European did superheroic but it make it work mostly because they area just a kung fu movie extra that get by Wesley Snip how to say it hangs together on a thread as in insult to be thread. It has a super sense conception of him but that itero intention blood goat. I am not saying you could not pull off a marrying exit and stricter to just that is probably was not. It has the absolutely no idea what it wants a vampire to be or really what it meant to be it violent to be like what exactly it does he force want to show the old pure blood vampire he is better than them to turn everyone into empire to their equal fortune to somehow carry on a char romance with a BL's mom just to stick Ida home in case he somehow cares up to become the most or less vampire hunter in the world that turned everyone into a vampire plan is our worst plan ever. Will the hell benefit from that less than our entire force supply into their predator? This is not going to be end badly. There are like 80 consciousness in this movie, which average out to be about one every 90 seconds. I mean, not to be no Karen or anything. She seems like a smart persona, but it takes her literally 2 days to come up with a cure for vampirism. Is that all it takes? If so, why are they still vampire in a play or two? Well, like yours only for a new vampire, you would be thinking they would be distributed like globally. Yeah, but just thinking about it for 5 seconds, there would be almost have to be more turned vampire than pure blooded ones. I don't want to be bring him into this, but if you have two groups and something they bought you've only to be second group, you are going to be see noticeable population differences. And the thing is, you can tell me I'm checking so hard about this movie, but Naruto made a movie where people talked about all of these things. Terrible plotters aside, they succeeded purely on just being fun to watch. And again, we cannot overstate this enough. This was Marvel's first to be success. It led directly to the revitalized X-Men and Spider-Man franchise, which in turn led to be current Avengers mega franchise, and considering David Gersa involvement, you can also make a good case for this leading right up to be Christopher Nolan Batman films. The movie just has so much charisma. There's a palpable scene that everyone involved was actually having a lot of fun. And the crazy thing is, by conventional movie making allergic, it should not have happened. It said it about a very obscure non-S superhero channel character, and to cap it for his minion a minority character to boot, you would have a hard time getting that pitch Madia to do when comic book movies area actually big, let alone a year after Batman and Robin. But just wish it also Wesley Snipes Sega baited vampire and suddenly you have got major studio funding. I really wish studios would take and that Rover did the Blade and learn a lesson from it about taking those character that they don't think work because of whatever reason and doing something with them. Every time you hear someone say they won't make a wonderful movie because they don't think they are market or something, I am lied with the Three Blood movies. Unfortunately, this would be director Stefan's last contribution to the Blair franchise, as he would be get replaced in the next film with Del Toro and Lara went to the Lake of Extraordinary, a gentleman movie, and we all know what they turned out. Plus once you put in like that, it really makes sense that I have always bought his one the rest of the trilogy. In addition, I don't have any real fear that a Marvel comic would be adapted at this art wasn't now in the wake of the Avenger at all. But a time Blade was released a most recent Marvel film where in 1986 and The Punisher in 1989 need to set a box of his own fire. Even was the only Marvel property I would seen in the 90s was the unreleased. The bottom line is why I was not expecting much and I was blown away. It was the first time I would seen a superhero movie that felt like a superhero movie, at least in a Marvel film. Superman and Batman were easy as well, but it did see him film and those in particular. He always felt a certain distance and goodness. Don't get me wrong, I loved his film Superman in particular, but he would grown up a Marvel fan and he felt like a Blade out of action and a drama. Give us a hero with believable flaws and place him in a world that was like our but he in the flight over Brighton the Shadow Stalker. I remember thinking, damn, maybe we are finally in the cusp of making some decent Marvel superhero film. I main in Spider-Man 2002 and Iron Man doesn't yet everything since the K films included. Would only one of them have happened to bad played a bomb out of the box office maybe? Spider-Man in particular had a long gas station period, but I think it would have been harder and budget might have been director. Who know what I think of Bladia as the first film of the Marvelous Cinematic. I decided to watch Bladia as a standalone film, and this review I based on that without much consideration for the sequel. The follow films I might have a better effect that it will be better film overall, but I wanted to give Blair's groundbreaking superhero film for a touch of horror. I have a DVD box set of Three Blade film,